The ice cracked like thunder beneath their feet. Dr. Elena Morrison held her breath as the ground scanner lit up with patterns that shouldn't exist. Not here. Not 2 miles beneath Antarctica's frozen surface. Her team had been drilling for climate data when the equipment detected the anomaly, a hollow space larger than 3 city blocks carved into bedrock that predated the ice sheet itself. "We need to go down," Elena said, her voice steady despite the hammering in her chest. Within hours, they had assembled gear and descended through a natural fissure that seemed almost deliberately placed. The cavern that greeted them defied explanation. Walls of polished black material, smooth as glass, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to shift when viewed from the corner of the eye, suggesting meanings just beyond human comprehension. At the chamber's center stood a cylindrical device, 15 feet tall and wrapped in rings of silver metal that rotated slowly without sound. The air around it felt charged, alive, with potential energy that made Elena's skin prickle. Her assistant, Marcus Webb, moved his scanner across the surface and went pale. "Boss, this thing is old. I mean really old. Carbon dating isn't even registering properly, but preliminary readings suggest millions of years, maybe more." Elena reached out, fingertips barely brushing the device's surface. It was warm. The moment contact was made, the symbols on the walls blazed with light, and a low hum filled the chamber. Every screen in the room flickered to life, displaying data in languages Earth had never seen. "Get everything recorded," Elena ordered. "Every symbol, every reading. And someone get me a direct line to Geneva. The world needs to know about this." The report reached the United Nations within 6 hours. Within 12, it had reached beyond Earth entirely. The Galactic Council, a coalition of 47 alien species that had observed humanity from a distance for decades, received the transmission through their monitoring stations. Their response was immediate and absolute. Earth had 72 hours to surrender the artifact or face military intervention. Queen Victoria Hayes sat in the emergency session of Earth's unified parliament, her face projected on screens across every nation. She was young for a planetary leader, only 42, elected 3 years prior on a platform of unity and scientific progress. Now she faced a choice that would define humanity's future. The Council's message had been clear. The artifact was a weapon of unimaginable power, one that had destroyed entire civilizations. Humanity, barely out of its infancy on the galactic stage, could not be trusted with such technology. "They're afraid of us," said General Raymond Carter, Earth's military commander. "That tells me the weapon works. Or that it's dangerous enough to destroy us if we try to use it," countered Ambassador Liu Chen. "We don't even know what it does." Victoria studied the images from Antarctica displayed across the conference table. The device called to something deep in her mind, a recognition she couldn't explain. "Dr. Morrison, what's your assessment?" Elena's hologram materialized above the table, transmitted from the excavation site. "Your Majesty, we've barely scratched the surface. The symbols are responding to our presence, almost like they're trying to communicate. I believe this technology is meant for us, specifically. The question is why?" Before Victoria could respond, alarms shrieked across the chamber. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo's voice cut through the chaos. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. 63 capital ships. Valkyrie Dominion configuration. They're taking position around Earth orbit. The Valkyrie had arrived a full 48 hours ahead of schedule. Their war commander Threx broadcast on all frequencies. His species resembled armored reptiles, scaled and severe, with eyes that gleamed like cut gems. "Humans of Earth, you have 24 hours to evacuate the Antarctic site and surrender the Architect device. Refusal will result in the systematic elimination of your military installations, followed by occupation. This is not negotiable." Victoria's jaw tightened. She muted the transmission and looked at her council. "General Carter, what are our chances? In open combat? None. Their shields alone could withstand everything we have. We might hold them off for a few days if we're lucky, but they'll break through eventually." He paused. "Unless that device gives us an edge. Dr. Morrison, I'm authorizing whatever resources you need. Find out what that weapon does, and find out fast." Victoria turned to Admiral Okonkwo. Buy her time. I don't care how. The first shots came 3 hours later. Human fighters launched from lunar bases, small and agile against the Valkyrie destroyers. They were outmatched in every metric. Firepower, shielding, speed, but they fought with desperate creativity. Pilots like Commander J. Torres pushed their craft beyond safety limits, using the debris field around Earth's satellites as cover, striking and vanishing before the enemy could lock weapons. Torres watched 2 of his squadron members vanish in bright flashes as Valkyrie plasma cannons found their marks. All units, pattern Delta 7, make them work for every inch. His fighters screamed through a cloud of shrapnel, missiles away, impacting against a destroyer's shield with little effect. They were gnats attacking giants, but every second mattered. In Antarctica, Elena worked without sleep. Her team had managed to interface human computers with the artifact systems, though the connection was unstable and prone to feedback that left technicians with splitting headaches. What they discovered turned Elena's blood to ice. The symbols weren't just writing. They were genetic code, human genetic code, mixed with sequences that didn't match anything in Earth's biosphere. Marcus pulled up a 3-dimensional model that rotated above their workstation. It's like a blueprint, but not for building something, for activating something already present. These sequences match junk DNA in the human genome, section scientists thought were evolutionary leftovers. His hands shook as he manipulated the data. Elena, if I'm reading this right, we're not looking at human evolution. We're looking at human engineering. The artifact suddenly pulsed, and the holographic archive activated without input. Images filled the chamber, scenes from a time before Earth's continents had formed their current shapes. A civilization of beings that resembled humans but moved with an otherworldly grace, their technology seamlessly blended with biology. The architects, the symbols named them. They had seeded the galaxy with life, experimenting and adapting, until they faced an enemy they couldn't defeat through conventional means. The Devourers appeared in the projection, entities that existed partially outside normal space, consuming matter and energy indiscriminately. The architects created weapons, fleets, artificial intelligences, all failures. In desperation, they chose a different path. They would create a living weapon, a species with unmatched adaptability and evolutionary potential, capable of learning and changing faster than any enemy could predict. Humanity, placed on Earth in primitive form, allowed to evolve naturally. The genetic triggers locked away until the day they would be needed. The artifact was the key, designed to activate when the Devourers returned, because the archive made one thing horrifyingly clear. The Devourers were still out there, and they were coming back. Elena transmitted everything to Geneva immediately. Victoria watched the archive in her private office, alone except for her security detail. When it finished, she sat in silence for a long time. Outside her window, the night sky flickered with distant explosions as human forces continued their losing battle in orbit. "Your Majesty," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The Council is assembled and waiting." She entered the chamber to find Earth's leaders watching her, with expressions ranging from fear to determination. Victoria didn't sit. "You've all seen the archive. The Valkyrie aren't here to protect us from the weapon. They're here to prevent us from becoming it." She placed her hands on the table, leaning forward. "Dr. Morrison believes she can activate the artifact. It will unlock whatever the architects placed inside us. But she can't guarantee what that means. We might become something other than human. We might not survive the process at all. And if we surrender," Ambassador Liu asked quietly, "the Valkyrie will take the artifact, and when the Devourers come, humanity will face them as we are now, unprepared, unevolved. We'll be extinct within a generation." General Carter stood. "Then we don't have a choice. We were made for this." "We always have a choice," Victoria countered. "I won't make this decision alone, but I need an answer. Reports indicate the Valkyrie are preparing to bombard major cities." "They're done waiting." The vote was unanimous. Every nation, every representative, chose activation over surrender. Victoria felt the weight of that decision settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. She opened a secure channel to Antarctica. "Dr. Morrison, you're authorized to proceed. God help us all." Elena stood before the artifact with her entire team evacuated to minimum safe distance. The activation sequence was simple once they understood it. A touch, a specific genetic marker, a human hand against the device's surface with intent. She pressed her palm flat against the warm metal and felt the artifact recognize her, recognize what she was, what humanity was meant to become. The pulse began at the artifact and expanded outward at the speed of light. It passed through rock and ice, through ocean and atmosphere, invisible but undeniable. Every human on Earth felt it in the same instant, a sensation like lightning running through their veins, rewriting and awakening. In orbit, Commander Torres gasped as his reflexes suddenly sharpened to impossible levels. He saw the Valkyrie targeting laser before it fired, and moved his fighter with precision that should have been beyond human capability. On Earth, soldiers found themselves moving in perfect synchronization without communication. Scientists grasped concepts that had eluded them for years. Athletes discovered strength they'd never possessed. But it went deeper than physical enhancement. Humanity gained something the architects had engineered specifically for war: absolute tactical unity when needed. The ability to coordinate across vast distances through quantum entanglement woven into their modified DNA. Victoria felt the change wash over her and understood immediately what had happened. She wasn't just Victoria Hayes anymore. She was Victoria Hayes connected to every human alive, able to sense their readiness, their fear, their determination. It was overwhelming and intoxicating and terrifying all at once. The tide of battle shifted in moments. Human fighters moved like a single organism, anticipating enemy movements and striking with coordinated precision. Ground-based railguns that had missed their targets before now fired with perfect accuracy. Threx watched his tactical display dissolve into chaos as his forces suddenly faced an enemy that fought like they could read Valkyrie minds. "Impossible," he hissed. "Retreat to defensive formation. Full shields." But it was already too late. The humans weren't just better fighters now. They were strategic prodigies. Every pilot and soldier instinctively understanding the flow of battle. They found weaknesses in Valkyrie formations that shouldn't have existed. Exploited gaps in shield coverage with missiles fired from impossible angles. 3 destroyers fell in the first hour after activation, 7 more in the second. Threx opened a channel to the Galactic Council in desperation. "The humans have activated the architect weapon. They're not what they were, requesting immediate reinforcements." The Council's response was silence. They had monitored everything, and they had come to a terrifying conclusion. The architects hadn't just created humanity as a weapon. They'd created them as the weapon, the final answer to a threat the Council had been hiding from for millennia. Victoria knew the moment to strike. She broadcast on all frequencies, her voice carrying the weight of a species transformed. "War Commander Threx, this is Queen Victoria Hayes of Earth. Cease your attack immediately, and I will share with you what we've learned from the archive." Threx's image appeared, scales darkened with stress. "You have no authority to negotiate. I have every authority," Victoria replied calmly. "Because in approximately 214 years, the Devourers will reach the outer rim of this galaxy. The architects detected their approach before they went extinct. That's why they created us. That's why the artifact activated now. Not because we're a threat to the Council, but because we're the only defense against what's coming." She transmitted the archive data directly to his ship. Threx watched, his expression cycling through disbelief, horror, and finally resignation. "The Council knows of this threat? Your Council has known for centuries," Elena's voice cut in. "From Antarctica, we've decrypted their monitoring logs from the artifact's database. They've been searching for the architect weapons, hoping to use them when the time came. They just didn't expect to find one that was still alive and evolving." Victoria continued, her tone hardening. "You came here to take our birthright, to control what we were always meant to become. Instead, you forced our hand ahead of schedule. So here's what happens next. You withdraw your fleet, report to your Council that humanity is now active, and we begin preparations for the real war. Or you continue this pointless fight and ensure that when the Devourers arrive, the galaxy will be too weakened to resist." Threx was silent for a long moment. Finally, He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect among his people. The Velkari Dominion withdraws. But understand, human queen, the Council will not easily accept a weapon species among the civilized worlds. Then they'll have to learn, Victoria said. Because we're not going anywhere, and we're not hiding what we are. The architects made us to fight. Fine, we'll fight. But we choose our battles, and we choose our allies. The Velkari fleet began breaking orbit, their ships forming up for the jump to hyperspace. Victoria watched them go from her office window, aware of millions of minds touching hers at the edge of consciousness, all of humanity linked in ways they were still learning to understand. Dr. Morrison's message came through minutes later. Your Majesty, we've found something else in the archive. Instructions, training protocols, weapons specifications. The architects left us everything we'd need to prepare. Then we start immediately, Victoria ordered. Open channels to all nations. We have 2 centuries to become what we were meant to be. Over the following weeks, humanity began its transformation in earnest. The enhanced abilities stabilized, became controllable. People learned to access the collective knowledge when needed, and retreat into individuality when desired. Military forces trained with new capabilities, pushing the boundaries of what human soldiers could achieve. Scientists accelerated their research, making leaps in technology that would have taken decades before the activation. But Victoria understood the deeper truth. Humanity hadn't just gained power, they'd gained purpose. For all of human history, the species had wondered why they existed, what cosmic role they played. Now they knew. They were the inheritors of the architect's final work, created specifically to stand against an enemy that had driven their creators to extinction. 3 months after activation, Victoria addressed the Galactic Council directly, her transmission broadcast from a newly constructed orbital platform. Behind her, human warships, sleek vessels incorporating architect technology salvaged from ruins now accessible across Earth, flew in formation. Not a threat display, but a statement of capability. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, her image projected across 47 homeworlds. Humanity has activated its full genetic heritage. We understand what we are, and why we exist. The architects created us to defend against the Devourers, and we accept that responsibility. But we will not be controlled, and we will not be contained. Council representatives murmured in their various languages, translated in real time. The council leader, a crystalline being named Crystallix, whose species had led the coalition for 3,000 years, spoke with a voice like chimes. You ask us to trust a weapon species, to allow you freedom when you were designed for destruction. We were designed for survival, Victoria corrected. For adaptation. For victory against impossible odds. Yes, that makes us dangerous, but the Devourers make us necessary. She pulled up tactical projections. Our analysis of the archive data indicates the enemy will reach the Perseus Arm in 214 years. They'll consume everything in their path unless we stop them. The architects failed because they tried to fight with conventional technology. We won't make that mistake. And if we refuse your offer of alliance? Crystallix asked. Victoria's expression didn't change. Then we defend Earth and let the rest of the galaxy burn. But I don't think you'll refuse. Because you've been searching for architect weapons for centuries, and you just found the only one that survived. You need us more than we need you. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species called for humanity's immediate quarantine. Others recognized the truth in Victoria's words. After hours of discussion, Crystallix delivered the verdict. Humanity will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. You will have access to our technology, our knowledge, and our resources to prepare for the coming threat. In exchange, you will submit to oversight and agree to defend all Council worlds when the Devourers arrive. Agreed, Victoria said immediately. But the oversight is mutual. We'll share our architect technology, but Council species will help us search for more. If the architects left weapons on Earth, they may have left them elsewhere. We need to find every advantage before the enemy arrives. The agreement was formalized within days. Humanity's first starships, crewed by soldiers and scientists whose enhanced abilities made them ideal for deep space exploration, began launching toward distant worlds identified in the Architect archives. They carried Victoria's message to any other sleeper weapons that might exist. Wake up, because the war is coming. In her private quarters aboard the flagship Defiant, Victoria looked out at stars humanity was seeing up close for the first time. Dr. Morrison's face appeared on the communications screen. Your Majesty, we've received responses from 2 of the deep space probes. Potential Architect sites on planets in the Andromeda sector. Dispatch exploration teams immediately, Victoria ordered. She paused, then asked the question that had haunted her since activation. Elena, are we still human? Morrison considered carefully. We're more than we were. Different from what we would have become without intervention. But we're still us. We still choose, still feel, still question. That's more human than any genetic code. She smiled slightly. Besides, the Architects didn't want mindless weapons. They wanted a species capable of adapting to any threat. That requires intelligence, creativity, compassion. Everything that makes humanity what it is. Victoria nodded slowly. Outside her window, Earth hung in the distance, blue and green and beautiful, humanity's birthplace, and now their fortress. Whatever came in the next 2 centuries, whatever sacrifices would be required, they would face it together, not as victims of circumstance, but as the inheritors of an ancient legacy. The Queen of Earth turned from the viewport and began drafting orders for the expansion of human space. Training facilities, shipyards, research stations, all the infrastructure needed to prepare for a war across galactic scales. Humanity had been given a purpose written into their very DNA, and Victoria Hayes would ensure they were ready when the time came. The Architects had created them to fight. The Devourers would learn that some weapons once awakened could never be put back to sleep.